contest is brought to you by Rocket Jockey, the movie, starring Chris Thompson.
1996 was still a transitional period for PC gaming when it comes to the implementation of 3D.
Access granted.
The year would begin with 2.5D sprite-based first-person shooter Duke Nukem 3D in January. Weird tactical shooter Terra Nova Strikeforce Centauri would release in March, which was 3D, but even in 96 was criticized for its blocky graphics. In May 96, Final Doom would release, another sprite-based 2.5D game. Although more of an expand-alone, it was followed only a month later by the fully 3D, polygon-based first-person shooter, Quake. The first Tomb Raider would also see an appearance in October on the PlayStation, followed by the DOS version in November due to a timed exclusivity deal. Speaking of consoles, this is the same year that would bring us Mario 64, Nights into Dreams, Tekken 2, and Resident Evil. The year would end with Realms of the Haunting, a strange sprite-based first-person shooter puzzle adventure game. Through demos given away on magazines, any kid growing up had the potential to have an encyclopedic knowledge of video games. The internet had not yet been widely adopted, but almost every game had a demo and every magazine came with a disc. Sometimes 2 discs. Actually, I had so many without magazines, I think my dad must have found them in a newsagent's dumpster, because I know he probably wouldn't have paid for it.
Well, Mr. Harris, let's see what we've got here.
It was around this time I would have tried out a little demo for a game called Rocket Jockey, and fell in love. Physics-based gameplay was unique for the time, leading to hilarious, almost emergent examples of cartoon violence. And the surf rock soundtrack somehow fits so well with the old-timey jockeys in riding pants and leather jackets. These jockeys would be strapped to a rocket that can barely steer. They can launch cables to either slingshot around pylons scattered around the course, or yank other riders off their rockets directly, or to combine left and right cables to make a clothesline, or tie something to a post, or even create an impromptu bowler out of people. You can tear shreds off rockets to make them fly even worse, or tear off someone's boxes. The rocket has 2 speeds, fast and faster. And faster will also produce heat. Gain too much heat and you explode. Don't think too hard about it, just have some fun. Believe me when I say this is one of the most incredibly fun games you'd ever play. There are 3 different types of game mode. Race, War, and Ball. Sorry, that's Rocket Race, Rocket War, and Rocket Ball. Not Race War. There's no Race War. I disavow. Rocket Race involves tagging pylon checkpoints or flying between them to race against a qualifying time. Other riders are present but mainly act as another obstacle in this mode. Precision is stressed as some of the gates can be butt-clenchingly narrow, or even strapped with clotheslines or bombs. Rocket Ball uses the game's novel physics to slingshot balls, wheels and bombs into a goal. Traps and other jockeys again being more of an obstacle, though to advance you still have to achieve a large enough lead over your competitors. In both of those modes, there's a limit to the extent you can grapple other jockeys. Rocket War is a free-for-all game mode that usually requires you to take out all other opponents. As always, inventive course design presents its own challenges. Rocket Jockey was the brainchild of Sean Callahan, who said he drew some inspiration from the pod racing of Star Wars Episode 1, and how vulnerable the pilots appeared, with the idea of the cable hooks coming from 1989's Batman. This is the rocket Sean Callahan had to hide because it looked too much like a Tom Hayes came up with the surf rock theme for the game's music, and somehow used his connections to enlist Dick Dale for the soundtrack, the legendary guitarist who inspired the Beach Boys, as well known from that familiar Pulp Fiction theme. Could you believe I had to manually add the metadata to this because VLC couldn't find it? When I did some searching, all of Dick Dale's songs, bar one, Zos? Exodus, maybe? Exodus? Playing now or on other albums. So I don't know what the licensing is like there. And do you know why surf rock sounds like that? Because of Dick Dale's Lebanese heritage, his experience with Middle Eastern music drove a lot of that distinctive sound. I thought that was a nifty fact. I didn't know that before. So maybe only one unique Big Dale song on that album, maybe. That's gotta be worth some hipster cred, right? If it seems like I'm constantly trying to validate this game, it's because I love it and I think it deserves more recognition. I'm not the only one. A bold take from an article from Ars Technica in 2011 claimed, "Masterpiece, Rocket Jockey for the PC." You heard me. I never bought Rocket Jockey. Barely anyone did. Rocket Jockey advertised multiplayer on the box, but inside contained a note with a link to a patch which didn't exist yet. The development studio Rocket Science would shut its doors a year later. Callahan would go on to work at Microsoft and eventually converted the old game to Direct 3D. He also ported the game to Xbox and Xbox 360, in a secret version that has only been played by him and his family due to worries over licensing and any retaliation that might come therefrom. I would eventually come to revisit Rocket Jockey years later. These days, with services like Steam and GOG, 10, 20 or even 30-year-old games, relatively easy to get at very little cost. But an unknown game that sold only a few thousand copies would have disappeared entirely from the internet, if not for the efforts of abandoned websites. In particular, Home of the Underdogs. Started by a Thai woman to play games she could no longer buy in stores, Home of the Underdogs was a particularly formative site in my development as a young man who happens to play video games and, you know, was kind of lonely. When I think of how few copies of Rocket Jockey were sold, yet the various retrospectives that have still been written about this game and the numerous attempts at a fan remake, it makes me wonder how many people only know of Rocket Jockey from a demo and that abandoned website. How many gamers and developers were influenced by games they once downloaded from there? There is still no way to officially purchase Rocket Jockey. However they got their hands on the game, numerous people who share my continued enthusiasm have since attempted to resurrect the game. An attempted Unreal Tournament mod, an attempted Quake 3 mod, and an Unreal Tournament 2003 abortive attempt. The first standalone remake attempt, Jet Jockey, died in 2009. Another attempt, Sprocket Junkie, has been dead since May 2012. Another attempt in 2018 died in 2019 due to lack of funding. The last attempt, as of the time of this video, is in the Unity engine, being made by a single developer, and hasn't had an update since January 19, 2022. It's probably the most functional, but still just isn't the same as the original. All of these people were inspired by a game that in 3 months after launch had barely managed to sell 3,000 copies. I can't help but lament for an alternate history where Rocket Jockey launched with a functional multiplayer and had been successful. After Quake, which launched in the same year, competitive gaming would come into its own. Cash prizes and eventually ID Software's John Carmack's Ferrari being up for grabs, and being won by someone who would be one of the first people to turn gaming into a career. As we flicked through our gaming magazines, we began to realize gamers and developers both could reach the level of rock stars. But I guess we'll never know if they would ever be rocket stars. With its fun and innovative gameplay and its incredible soundtrack by a rock and roll legend, the flickering flame of nostalgia for this game still persists. Although barely playable these days without some tinkering, a hacked EXE allowing 1080p with a slightly scuffed UI, which you've been seeing in this gameplay footage, and a few persisting bugs. Even replaying this in 2023, I still think this game's fun. And I wish if only someone could update the thing for modern systems, everyone could realize how hip and cool it was. Delusions aside, although it may not have made much of an impact to the scene, nevertheless, it is a slice of gaming history that many people hope, myself included, will never be forgotten. Sean Callahan, if you're listening, you know what you need to do. For video game preservation, for history, for posterity, even if it means breaking the law. Like that lady who helped preserve video gaming through Home of the Underdogs. Hand over what the community needs to, you know, fix this puppy up proper. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe. Doing so is a massive source of encouragement to keep this up.